You're credited with turning your country around after the genocide, but critics say that the price of it was a flawed democracy. How do you respond?
It has almost become a cliche. It's one person says this, something like this 15 years ago, and everybody keeps repeating it, irrespective of the facts on the ground. That is my opinion. Because progress, as you will have seen yourself, is in every sector of our society. It has been on the governance front, it has been on the socio-economic front, it has been meaning democracy, rule of law, peace and stability. All these have been seeing good progress. Now, but in the end, maybe, I don't know whether people need to go back and forth defining what democracy is, because sometimes it has become anything anybody calls it. Anyone gives it a definition, and those who have control over the media dominate in giving it a definition. But I think it all comes down to people. Democracy is about people, how they are governed, how they express themselves, and when I see the kind of progress that critics talk about and they say is minus democracy, I wouldn't understand it. I don't know what it means, because the people of Rwanda, if you look at the rule of law that prevails, the institutions you have built, the electoral processes that happen regularly where people make their own choices and so on and so forth about their leadership. Democracy has actually gone up to the grassroots level. This is, when I was talking about decentralization, I really mean people at the grassroots, organized and freely making choices about their lives. I don't know what democracy is about if it is not about this. And in any case, for us right from the beginning, the way we live our lives and the way we have been developing our country, it's not that either you have social and economic development or you have democracy. That one, you have to have one and not the other. No, ours is to have both, and I think that's how it should be. Because in fact, in the end, whether anybody wants it, Rwanda is no exception. Democracy and economic development have to exist together, because if one is lacking, then the other one which you think you are having gets very badly affected.
And what is the biggest challenge in your view, Your Excellency, for Rwanda's economic growth? Is it corruption? Is it terrorist activity, possible terrorist activities in the future? Is it political turmoil?
For us, the problem is where we are coming from, and the progress we have made being sustainable. That is the major problem. Where we have come from is from total devastation of the country. The social fabric completely torn apart, starting from scratch. And we have had to rebuild everything from zero, if not negative. Now, and we have done that on the basis or on the background of very limited resources of our own or resources given us by other countries, partners or friends. So being able to convert this into long-term resources and sustainable development is the main challenge for us. But we have done one important thing that maybe gives us hope that it will be sustainable. We have brought the country back together. Our people are now back together. We have invested in our people, in education, in health. We have food self-sufficiency, and Rwandans are able to work hard, and together we have made this big progress. In fact, that's how we have also attended to other problems like security, whether it is medium or long term. Because for us, security is very broad. It's even about the well-being of our people in a general sense. So for us, the challenge, we had the worst of the problems you can imagine 20 years ago. That was our major challenge. We are coming out of that. And we've been bearing in mind other problems that can happen, and we have been working to prevent that by the kinds of investments we have made in our people and how we have made them. So terrorism may affect us like it has affected other countries. We are not an island in this region or in the world. We are linked in many ways to other countries that have seen terrorism. But it is not a major threat for us today, much as we factor it in our security architecture whenever we are thinking about medium and long term. And we have to deal with some of these issues that relate, except for some threats we have had of people who carried out genocide, who still live in the region. But these are slightly a different kind of threat that we have come to get used to dealing with, and we are dealing with them over a long time. And we have resolved the basis on which they can happen. The rest is to cooperate across the region and across the world to deal with terrorism so that it doesn't resist us.
And what about the possibility of political turmoil in Rwanda?
I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, it would be far-fetched to imagine that there is a political turmoil given our history, where we have come from, which was the worst kind of political turmoil. And then what we have done after that has put in place a very firm foundation that would not allow that to happen again, and we continue to work towards that. So for us, it's not, in fact, that's again one thing that actually answers to the question of some of the critics they talk about. They see what has happened in some other parts of the continent, say in North Africa or in some few other parts of our continent, and what happens either in the Middle East or something, things like that, and imagine or say, isn't it going to happen here? For us, it has happened here. So we are almost post that, we are after that. It has happened. It has happened to the worst level you can imagine. So we are getting out of that, and we are comfortable. The progress we are making is solid, is founded on people's...
Why, in your view, Mr. President, we've seen a swift action from the UN forces in dealing with M23 movement in the DRC, not that similar against or towards the FDLR. Do you have a sense, does Kigali sense that that the UN and the West in general, maybe, favoring DRC?
It's more complex than that. But I don't rule out elements that suggest double standards that operate in the international system, and different cases, even similar ones, are not treated the same way There is a preference for different reasons. It is the world we live in probably is interest-driven in most cases, sometimes even interests that are not very clear. Well, if you talk about that situation of M23 and so on, even at the time M23 was being targeted, which is fine with us, there was a multiple other such organizations or groups existing, actually worse ones that were causing more danger than that group. But they preferred to target one group. So, because FDLR has existed for the last 20 years, indeed, and they have been glossing over it and not doing anything about it. Even today, after the M23, when they had told us that they would deal with all of these groups, they dealt with M23 in whatever way they did or whatever came out of their efforts. The others, they became silent. Now we are seeing other problems that have existed before and continuing to exist. The FDLR continues to exist. The other day I was reading on the news problems happening in down south to the border with Zambia, Lubumbashi areas, Katanga areas. These problems have been there for long. Now I'm seeing UN is saying, oh, they are going there to put out fire in this part of the country. So in other words, the UN maybe is going to have a permanent force in the DRC that will keep fighting Congo's wars. But they can fight these wars, but they're not fighting the problems that are causing these wars to take place. So maybe it is a permanent job they are going to have.
And what are the problems in your view, Mr. President? The fundamental problems?
In the Congo?
Yes. That the UN is not fighting?
Well, because the country has to go. Why one comes from the very fact. Why would when the UN or any external force is the one to deal with the problems of any country, it means that country doesn't have forces, doesn't have governance structures, has political problems, serious political problems. So you see. Again, when we were talking about critics and so on, critics talk about Rwanda that is stable and don't talk about this place that has had chaos for maybe chaos has come to be synonymous with democracy. Maybe. That's what people are telling us. But if you're having pockets of problems across a country like that, you have groups and lawlessness within which these groups operate almost forever. And you have got to have a UN force to come and station in a country for unlimited number of years without even seeing the future when they will ever resolve the problem and get out. That tells you there is a problem, actually two problems. One is the problem of a country where that is happening. The other is the problem of those who come and pretend to be addressing problems when they're actually not doing anything. And it's just an ongoing huge expense.
So do you believe the UN is part of the problem?
It is absolutely, absolutely part of the problem. But if you may recall the history of it, yeah. UN was in Congo in 1960s. You know, the first UN Secretary General died in Congo. So you can imagine, UN has been active in Congo for now close to 70 years. So there must be a problem, absolutely.